The following podcast is brought to you on behalf of the Saracens Supporters Association and is not an official product of Saracens Limited. Content provided voluntarily by our guests and contributors are of their own opinion, which may change over time and should not be taken as fact, particularly as the podcast hosts are regularly talking drivel anyway. If you've got some drivel of your own you'd like to share, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at fezcast_SSA. You can search Facebook for the Fezcast, or you can email fezcast.ssa@outlook.com.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the very first Fezcast of 2023. Just me and Matt this week, chatting to you, but plenty to chat about. But first of all, Matt, Happy New Year. I haven't spoken to you on here since before Christmas and the nightmare in Brentford. But how you doing? You had a good Christmas, good New Year, mate?
Yeah, ticking along, mate. It's been the quiet Christmas and New Year that I wanted, really. Back at work again today, though, but all good.
Excellent. Well, yeah, I mean, much the same here, fairly quiet. I mean, last week, me and Barry managed to pull ourselves out of our food and alcohol-induced comas. And, hopefully Barry's managed to get dressed since then and now and whatever. But, yeah, exactly the same for me, very quiet. You were at the game at StoneX yesterday. We're recording this on... What day are we recording? This Sunday night, isn't it? Yeah, we're recording this Sunday night. New Year's Day. Woo!
Yeah, no, it's a good day. I sit in the south stand as well, so I was actually one of the few people that managed to stay dry for most of the game, which was pretty good.
You haven't got the full experience, Matt.
No, I mean normally I do tend to wander around a little bit and stand by the sidelines maybe for the second half. But yeah, we thought we'd best stay undercover for that one. But yeah, it's a bit night and day really, I think, compared to the London Irish game. So all good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll talk about that in our final part tonight. But first off, want to talk about discipline, or more properly, discipline issues. And yeah, there's going to be a rant. Eddie Jones has popped off his rugby coil, as it were, or off of our radar. But there's somebody else who's going to get both barrels from me, not from our club. Although I know you're fully prepared to play devil advocate over this one. But first of all, when we talk about discipline, we've had the disciplinary committees this week. The as Barry so wonderfully puts it, the biscuit. Was it the biscuit committees? He puts it, So, but Ben Earl, his red card rescinded. Me and Barry last week did say that we could understand why it was given as a red, but obviously they've gone to committee, and Matt Carley and the TMO got that one wrong in the viewpoint of the disciplinary committee, which is very unusual because that is a smack in the face for that refereeing team, isn't it, Matt?
It is, yeah. And I must admit, I think I'm waiting to see the actual disciplinary report. I mean, England Rugby, the RFU, they're really slow in releasing the disciplinary judgments. But actually, I'll tell you what, Jez, let's write this one in, because I've just Googled it and they have released it. So I'm going to look at it really quickly. We can actually talk about what they've said in the hearing. And they've also done the same with the Joe Marler one. So.
This is thoroughly good stuff. Well, look, I mean, while you're reading that, the one thing I will say is, what's worse about it is, it's been rescinded. It's been turned around and said, no, they got it wrong or whatever, and you're reading it up. But that red card absolutely changed that game. And I think if Ben had stayed on the pitch and we'd had a full complement 15 for that whole period of the game, then the result would have been a lot different, and we'd be looking at 100% records in the league going into the new year, and we'd be 15 points clear, I suppose, at the moment. I mean, I suppose, I'm not going to turn around and say that Matt Carley should be sacked or whatever, but there's definitely got to be an element of someone needs to sit down with him and say, look, you need some mentoring here, whether it's Wayne Barnes or Nigel Owens or, one of the older referees coming in and just sitting down with him and perhaps taking him down to the championship for a couple of games. Just one, to him to get his confidence back, but two, just to work on those issues. And as I say, we'll talk about it in the Chiefs game, but, it's his communication and the way that he tried to impose himself in the game. It didn't go well. But go on, Matt, you've had a chance to speed reads. What are they saying?
There are several pages. One of the more important things actually is that Ben Earl was represented by Mark McCall and by Neil Golding. So we sent everyone into this
the big guns in,
yeah. I'm going to skip through what Ben Earl said in all of it, but the panel's consideration was that Tom Pearson's line changed very, very late because he'd collided with his own player. And that Ben Earl had bent significantly. He was then tackled by Marco Riccioni, I believe, and the effect of that was to drop the London Irish player. And they're also saying that Ben Earl's movement, where he sort of bent down, turned his head, turned his arm, is an act of self-preservation rather than actually part of the tackle. And the panel basically, I'm going to go back again because Ben Earl's disputed that he didn't try to wrap, and they've watched 2 seconds of footage in super slow motion and have pointed to Ben Earl's right arm coming up to grab the ball and a wrap with the left hand. And the panel's agreed with that. So the panel has actually totally rejected the referee saying that he hasn't tried to wrap, which I think was the issue that we talked about when it actually happened.
Yeah.
They weren't totally convinced, but the panel was also satisfied that Ben Earl couldn't have done anything else to prevent him making contact with the London Irish player's head. So they're satisfied that Ben Earl did everything he possibly could. Once some slightly unusual things had happened in that he collided with his own player and he actually got tackled by our prop. Ben Earl was doing absolutely everything he possibly could to make that situation as safe as possible. So they've mitigated it completely. He's attempted to make a totally legitimate tackle, and the RFU's conceded total mitigation, which is, I mean, it's a stunning show of common sense.
It's a stunning show of common sense, but two, it's a stunning rejection of what the referee did on the game, and having sat on disciplinary committees myself, albeit at county level, so a lot lower level than this is, obviously. But the referee comes in and you take the word of the referee, and the referee is 100% right 99 times out of 100, 999 times out of 1,000. I'd actually say 9,999 times out of 10,000. It is quite remarkable that Matt Carley has been given such a vote of almost no confidence in. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but that's my view.
I mean, everybody makes mistakes, including referees, and that's absolutely fine. What I do need to point out as well is they've not wiped it away entirely. They've actually suggested it should have been a yellow card, and Ben Earl's record actually now says that it was a yellow, which, okay, fair enough. I think, the situation was he did make contact with a player's head, but there was an awful lot of mitigation for it, and therefore yellow seems pretty reasonable. I don't know about you. So they've said that the referee was right to give something. They've said a red was unwarranted, which I think is pretty fair.
Indeed. Well, move on. Also in that game, there was another red card. Well, there should have been 2 red cards, but again, there was just the one. And Coleman gets a ridiculously lenient ban, considering that's his 3rd time that he's done that against us. The lad's obviously got an issue. I mean, how lenient can you be to someone? They say he'll go on a training course or whatever. Clearly hasn't worked in the past. I mean, a long ban it should have been a longer ban, I think.
I think so. Tom Wollstonecroft was on oxygen for about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
He's actually, it does sound like his concussion, he does have a concussion, but it isn't as, it's not as bad as it could be, and it's not as bad as previous concussions he's had before, but he's going to be following the protocols of having at least 2 weeks off. And it means that he could be out for longer than the player who's been given the red card for injuring him, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The panel says that there was no mitigating factors whatsoever. They've said it was highly dangerous but not intentional. I mean, I know some people have said that he meant to do it. I don't think he did. I think his technique is shocking and it needs work. But I don't think for a second that he went out deliberately to hit him in the head.
Unlike the second incident from the centre which I think he did target Billy Vinipola, which, the fact that he's got away with that one scot-free really does embugger my mind, really. It really does.
Yeah. I'm not really sure about that one. I think in a way the trip on Billy was just as cynical as the rest of it. But again, I'm just reading through the Coleman judgment, and where we've just talked about Ben Earl's one making a lot of logical sense, the Coleman one doesn't. They've actually deducted 2 weeks of mitigation from it. They've had a 30% reduction just because he was nice in the hearing, by the sounds of it.
I hate that. Yeah. I absolutely hate that. I've written for Debbie Knight, who's been a former guest on the Fezcast, a essay a few years ago when Chris Ashton was getting sent off for fun, for accidentally brushing somebody's eye with the back of his hand, and I wrote about it and I said the problem with, and I said this many times at all, the problem with the disciplinaries is you go into disciplinary and say, right, either it's a red or it's not. Yeah, it's a red. Okay, now the entry point for this is this amount. Let's find reasons to mitigate it. No, you shouldn't do that. The way it should be is that every red card, you go to disciplinary, is it correct that it's a red card? Yes. No. No, do what they've done with Ben Earl. Bang, you're free to play. Red, 3-week ban, in straight away. No argument about it. Bang. And then you find reasons to increase the ban. And it's no good turning around and saying, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to do it. Tough, you did it. If I went and nicked an apple from my local shop and the fuzz took me into court, I can't turn around and say, yeah, okay, fair cop, gov, really sorry, didn't mean to do it. They just laugh at you. And it should be the same here. You turn around and say, 3-week ban, okay, in this case, well, this is your third time you've done it, third time you've been up in front of the beak. I'm afraid to say, mate, that's 6 weeks straight off. Yep. And bang, and you build it up, and sooner or later, people will realise that you can't do it. And when you start building things up and making it, and people will say, but you'll only end up with like 11 players on the field and because the rest of them will be suspended. Well, then the emphasis goes on the coaching staff and the playing staff to get it right and to be better and to play within the laws. And it will solve everything.
Yeah. I've reading further into it now, the only other bit of mitigation they've given, it doesn't really say what's been applied to what, is that Wollstonecroft getting the ball was from a quick tip pass as opposed to him receiving it in the back line and being lined up for several seconds before he's been hit in the head. It was sort of a fairly quick movement of the ball to Wollstonecroft and then to being tackled. So the time that Coleman has had to line him up is less than someone running at full tilt and clotheslining someone having lined him up for ages. I get that a little bit, but it doesn't. It really shouldn't mean mitigation at all, should it?
No, absolutely not. He's hit him in the head. He's caused him a lot of damage, and it's a lenient ban. Right. Anyway, talking about lenient bans, the most lenient ban, stupidest ban, Joe Marler. And now I'm going to have a proper rant now. And I've been ranting with people on social media. Yes, I know I shouldn't go on rock.co.uk and whatever, but I can't help myself sometimes. Joe Marler, one, as a person, is a hypocrite. He'll go out there and he'll talk about mental health, this, be kind, that, do this, do that, just be nice to people. And he goes on the pitch and he refers to a bloke's mum as a whore. Regardless of the fact that the bloke's mum's dying in hospital, doesn't matter. He's called someone's, he's sat there on a rugby field and gone, your mother's a whore. And then 5 seconds later, it's gone, your mum's a whore. That is out of order, straight off, right? I absolutely hate this. And people say, but it's just banter. No, it's not. It's vile, offensive, and it's disgusting, quite frankly. Now, if I was to turn around to one of my colleagues at work and say that, I'd expect to be in HR and I'd expect to be sacked through gross misconduct. Straight off, 100%. And I wouldn't argue about it. And Joe Marler, he's got his reputation. He's a bit of a fun lad and everything. He plays the forward. He's not. He's an intelligent bloke. And what the problem I've got more than anything else is that he's the sort of player who hasn't got the skill to beat a player through his own playing of the game, And because he has to play these mind games, and there's other people who do it all the time. And there may well be players at Saracens. And if a Saracens player gets caught doing exactly the same thing, I will give them the same rounds of the kitchen sink as I'm giving Joe Marler now. Simple as. But the great players, the players that we all respect, Martin Johnson, Richard Hill, Wayne Shelford, Philippe Seller, Michael Liner, Francois Pienaar, they wouldn't have dropped themselves to this level to try and gain an advantage. It's the same in cricket. All these people, sledging is great. No, it's not. It's unedifying and it has no place in the game. If you cannot beat your man opposite you through your own skills, at the end of the game, you shake his hand and say, you were better than me today. Well done. Next time I'll try and be better. You don't turn around and throw this sort of abuse out. And it's the same as those who've thrown out homophobic abuse here, there and everywhere. No, we need rugby to take a stance on this and to make it absolutely 100% clear that this sort of behaviour is not to be tolerated. Rugby supposedly is a game for gentlemen. Well, let's start acting like it. Matt, what do you think? I mean, where do you stand on all of this?
I think the ban he's received is lenient. I mean, I'm not someone that thinks he should be banned for a year. But equally, I'm not going to turn around and say, oh, this opens the floodgates to lots of silly things. But I do think everyone's talking about a precedent being set. And a precedent being set in the Premiership, and Marler's sentence is going to be the same for everyone who says anything on a rugby pitch now. No. If you actually look, again, I'm going back because I've done this already, looked back at the RFU's disciplinary proceedings, the precedent was set a month ago in an incident in the lower leagues, in community rugby, where a player has gone up exactly the same as Joe Marler has, up on an RFU panel for homophobic abuse. Yes, different to what Joe Marler said, but in this particular game, there was a bit of a ruckus going on, as happens in a game of rugby. There was a little bit of handbags, a little bit of pushing and shoving, and a player has, I'm not going to defend this, but in the heat of the moment, used a word associated with abusing associated with homophobic abuse. Now, it's directed at a player. He's got no idea whether or not the player is homosexual. He's just used it angry straight away. Referee's heard it, given him a red card, and the bloke has apologised to absolutely everyone on the pitch, apologised to the referee, taken the red card, walked off, held his hands up and gone, that absolutely should not have happened. Fine. He's been given 6 weeks. Absolutely fine. Totally agree with that. He agrees with it. Everyone does. Why has Joe Marler had mitigation in his ban and that particular player hasn't? I can't really answer that. And the one thing that does actually annoy me about Marler's ban, and I've spotted this from a lot of other people as well, is he's got to go to a school or a college and do a presentation on values in rugby, blah, 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 blah. Doing that should not be a punishment. Our top-level players should be doing that as a matter of course. That should not be seen as something that you have to do as penance for making a tit of yourself on the rugby pitch. You should be doing that anyway. And to be honest, that actually is one of the things that has annoyed me the most about that ban, is seeing that as it's really not framed very well at all.
Well, absolutely, 100% it is. And I mean, I would, if Joe Marler got a year ban, I personally wouldn't be complaining about it. I just think that we need to be an awful lot better, 100%. And we said this about social media, whatever, and the such like. At the end of the day, his captain should have stood up there and said, Joe, that's not acceptable. But Danny Care immediately came out and supported him and then deleted the tweet, because Danny Care tweets before, he puts his tweeting fingers in motion before his brain is in gear, and then looks an idiot because he has to delete it. The whole game of rugby needs to turn around and say, no, I'm sorry. If that is just not acceptable. It's not banter. It's not funny. If you can't win a game through your own skills and you have to wind up someone, because what Marler was doing there was trying to get that lad Heenan sent off for throwing a punch. And that is cheating. And yeah, I've always said that cheating's part of rugby union, and that when the referee blows his whistle and says, that's cheating, you accept it, you go back 10 yards, you might have a chunter under your breath. But that is the worst, one of the worst forms of cheating that is out there. And quite frankly, Joe Marler, I have no respect for the man, regardless. And to be fair, like the player that you mentioned, I mean, the only reason they're apologising is because they were caught. At the end of the day, I am not going to be generous to them. That's going through their mindset that they can throw out these sort of like slurs and abuse, and they think is an acceptable part of the game. And they only apologise. It's like politicians being caught in sex scandals, isn't it? They only apologise for being caught, not for actually doing what they've done. There you go. First Jez rants of 2023. I thought that was quite a good one, Matt.
That was, and I missed half of it.
Hi, Alex Osterbury here, Director of Rugby for Saracens Women. You're listening to the Saracens Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back to part 2 and talking about the New Year's honours list because it's come out. I mean, you know me, Matt. Yeah, I'm not a great fan of the honours list, full stop. It's not, as I've often said, as much as it would disappoint my mum and dad, if ever I was to get offered one, I would turn it down. Although, I mean, I'll probably leave that one to my brother. I'm sure he'll get one at some point in the future, having done 30 plus years for the same company and whatever. But yeah, I suppose we have to give out congratulations to Tony Rowe for his CBE that he received. And I'm sure, that would have gone some way to soften the blow of the weekend's rugby.
Well, yeah, Tony Rowe's CBE, or as it stands for, a comprehensive beating of Exeter. So there we go. Yeah,
that wasn't what I called it, was it? When we talked about it on WhatsApp.
No, but this is supposed to be a family-friendly podcast, so we should probably skip over that one. But yeah, I'm a little bit. Can we do
a double tick on the explicit part of it?
I'm a little bit like you, Jez. I'm if I was offered an honour of some order of the British Empire or whatever, it's not for me. I probably would turn it down. But equally, there are plenty of people out there that are deserving of some kind of recognition nationally, and I'm very glad that some people have. So there we go.
Absolutely. Well, two people who haven't got, who should be knighted are Sir Kev Sinfield and Sir Rob Burrow, who I will refer to as Sir Kev Sinfield and Sir Rob Burrow. And indeed, unfortunately, we lost Doddy Weir last year. Doddy should have been Sir George Weir before he passed away. Apparently, the reason that they can't get it is because they've had awards of OBEs or MBEs or whatever within the last 5 years. But like a lot of laws, that's poppycock, and they should be changed because, quite frankly, those two guys have done so much work. And at the end of the show, we will talk about something that I'm doing this year for MND as well, which I hope you can all get involved in. But yeah, good news though for the Mavericks as well. Yes. There was a British Empire medal being awarded.
Yeah, British Empire medal to Ziana Butt, who's in the Mavericks development pathway in the under-21s and things as well. And, at such a young age to be recognised, services to netball and to diversity as well, which in netball is a huge topic. So yeah, for someone who has probably only been playing netball for a little while and hasn't long left school, to be recognised in the area for such an achievement, that's brilliant, really. So yeah, congratulations to Ziana.
Yeah, absolutely, brilliant news that is. And yeah, as I say, as much as I would turn it down, so Fezcast listeners, please don't write in nominating me or Matt for services to rugby podcasts.
No, give it a Barry. He'd love it.
Yeah, Barry would go for that one, would he? So look. Great news for everybody involved, and whatever you like to say about Toad of Sandy Park, Mr. Rowe CBE, as I'm sure he'll expect to be called now. Congratulations to everybody who's won awards, and hopefully they'll get it sorted so that Kev Sinfield and Rob Burrow get their proper recognition.
Yeah,
it's still ranked with me that Bobby Moore was never made Lord. So.
Well, I mean, someone who, I mean, even for you and I, who don't give it too much water if we had a particular honour like that, but for Floyd Steadman to be recognised is, I think, it's incredibly important, very well deserved. But yeah, also someone who's not only given a lot to rugby, but you don't need me to go into the context of why he's got an OBE. Just read his book. That's the main thing, and read the words that Maro Itoje has had to say about him recently as well.
Absolutely. Well, Floyd is definitely someone that we'd want to get on the Fezcast in the future. But let's have a break there, have another advert in, and then we'll come back and talk about the main bones of the game on New Year's Eve. And what a great way to end the year that was.
You are listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the Stonex.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, Matt, welcome back, you, and welcome back, everybody, to part 3 of the Fezcast, our first Fezcast of the year. And we have to talk about the Chiefs. And the first thing to say is, on Facebook, I'm friends with Joe Shaw and Juan Figalo and a couple of other Saracens at Lumini, shall we say, Jacques Berger and Bats Barings and whatever. Just how we got hold of these people in the past for various shows. But yeah, I think Joe and Juan Chippy must have listened in, or a couple of the players must have listened in, because Barry and I gave them a serious bollocking after the Irish game, which was deserved, I think, Matt.
It was, for all the talk about the red card to Ben Earl and things. I mean, at the end of the day, we played 14 on 12 for 10 minutes and came away with nothing. I think even with a full complement of 15, we'd have been lucky to get anything out of that game. So can't take that away. We were poor, and players have fronted up, and the coaching staff have fronted up. It doesn't happen very often for us. But yeah, great response, I think, this week against an Exeter team that were dreadful.
Well, absolutely. I mean, as I say, whereas, as I said, where everything that we highlighted last week, Barry and I, was 100% better from Saracens. Chiefs, and let's be honest with you, I mean, they were missing quite a few players. LCD was out, Sam Simmons was out, Stuart Hogg was out. They had quite a lot of youngsters on, not necessarily starting the game, but definitely on the bench. Their bench looked absolutely depleted. I think it was a 5th choice scrum half on the bench. Got a 19-year-old lad playing at number 8 who, at a level below, has looked good. But here he looked completely and utterly lost. But they were awful. I think, and I hate to say it's about a team and everything, but they were clueless. And I think it wasn't just the players. The coaching staff at Exeter Chiefs really need to have a long, hard look at themselves, because I think they sent them out with completely the wrong game plan. And right from the start, Ugo Monya, who was excellent on comms on BT Sport, and Lawrence Deladio, who was less so. But they did point out that, you go to play with the wind in the first half. They never executed any kicks correctly, and they didn't do what Saracens did second half, which was keep the ball in hand and just run phases. Too many times they kicked down the throat of our back three and allowed us time to accelerate into space. Max Moniz did it on a couple of occasions, very nearly made a couple of line bursts. Alex Good was doing his normal jack in the box, looking for gaps here, there and everywhere. And Sean Maitland was rolling back the years yet again. And then when we kicked, Sean and Max in particular and Andy Christie were getting underneath balls and causing huge problems. Our accuracy was so much better than Chiefs. Their accuracy was all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sam Maud's still deciding where some of his box kicks are going. The pace that they were playing at in the first half was embarrassing, really. I mean, it was almost like, today, the new World Rugby guidelines have come into effect about speeding up the game and using the ball. I think they were just making sure they used every second they possibly could on New Year's Eve, because from New Year's Day, they're not allowed to anymore. But yeah, we could see
it's not like roaming charges, is it? They're not going to roll over anything. I mean, I think at one point they pointed out that one of their rucks lasted 17 seconds, whereas our ruck speed at points was less than a second and a half from initial contact to Ivan Van Zyl or Ali Davis getting the ball out, and that made such a difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've absolutely nailed it there. I mean, actually, for us in the stands to be getting frustrated and at times actually booing because it's so slow coming out of a ruck, that's pretty massive. But that's exactly
ironic, really.
Well, yeah, exactly what was happening. Maunder was taking ages and ages and ages to get the ball out of a ruck. In which time we know exactly what's going to happen. So we had pretty much every single one of our backs almost in the backfield, ready to catch a ball that is going to be swirling around in the wind and difficult to catch. But everyone's managed to get themselves set and get themselves ready for it. And in the second half, even Van Zyl, we thought, well, maybe we're going to, we're not going to kick at all because the wind, I mean, it was ridiculous. But actually we did. We box kicked as much as they did. But Van Zyl was doing it very, very quickly, which meant that Exeter's players weren't necessarily set. And there was a few times where the ball just dropped into space.
Yeah.
Because he's, yes, it's difficult box kicking, but yeah.
Ivan Van Zyl, it's the one thing I always say about Scrum Masters, the criticism I throw at Ben Youngs frequently. Ivan Van Zyl gets to a ruck, to the breakdown, and he knows what he's going to do. He knows what's on. Maunder hadn't got a clue, and he had to get to there, get the ball back, and then have a look. He had no idea. And whether that's because the players weren't on the same, I feel sorry for the fullback. Is it Hodge?
Yeah.
He had other than kicking down the throats of our back three too many times, he had a really good game in a losing in a thumping at the end of the day, a 5-0 thumping. That was a thumping.
Yeah.
And I think if the weather had been any better, it might have been a lot more because, just the way we played. I mean, comment I've written down here, perhaps Baxter needs to concentrate less on how he wants rugby union to be set up in England and more on actually getting his team A, fit, and B, playing better. I've also gone on to say, however, given the amount of Chiefs players or players Chiefs look like losing, you can see why he's keen on the relegation issue being talked about before next season, because there's a huge exodus from Chiefs at the moment, and their youngsters coming through do not look up to the standards that Chiefs have set for themselves.
Yeah, I think they're in a bit of a period where they've got a lot of thinking to do. I look at them the way we sort of looked at Leicester 2 or 3 years ago, where the succession plan didn't really seem to be happening. And I think it's something that we need to be very careful of ourselves in the next 2 or 3 years when we start to lose big players. And do we have replacements coming through? Don't know. Teams go through peaks and troughs, but I think Exeter have sleptwalked into it a little bit. So yeah, I don't know what the answer is for them, but yeah, they were rubbish. They touched the ball twice in our 22, and those 2 touches were the hooker chucking a line out in and no one catching it. So yeah, they were pretty awful. But that doesn't take away from the fact that we righted a lot of wrongs from the London Irish game, and we had a lot of players out there who really shone.
Well, absolutely. Let's accentuate the positives here and say who had a good game. And before we go on to the players, I want to mention Sir Craig, Maxwell Keys, and the refereeing team had an exemplary game. They were right on the button from the top. And, we mentioned Matt Carley, and I really feel sorry that I'm giving Matt a bit of not Matt B, but Matt C, a bit of a going over here. But the difference between the way that the game was refereed this week as opposed to the Irish game was green and purple, wasn't it, really, at the end of the day? I think that Maxwell Keys, communication, his desire to communicate with the key players on the pitch, not just the captains, but senior players. You could see him talking to Maro Itoje. You could see him talking to Johnny Gray. You could see him talking to Yandel. You could see him talking to Alex Good. You know, he was happy to discuss. He was happy to turn around and say, this is the decision. Yeah, and what he did brilliantly was that, and how well he worked brilliantly with the TMO was the TMO would turn around and say, look, I spotted something. It's a penalty only. He said, yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you very much. Let's get on with it. And he just blew the whistle, said, right, penalty here. Didn't have to go and look at 72 different angles in super slow-mo for 5.5 minutes. And the game flowed brilliantly. And I mean, I got into another social media spat with someone saying, oh, bloody boring game. Really didn't enjoy that. On the back of Owen Farrell's filthiness. And I said, if you cannot look at that game and appreciate everything that Saracens did brilliantly well without being flair, you don't understand the game of rugby union, and you really should, perhaps look elsewhere for your enjoyment. I mean, the way that Maxwell Keys, he had to penalise Chiefs because Chiefs couldn't cope with the pressure that's been put on with them. The only criticism I give to him is that I think that potentially there could have been a yellow card come out. However, I can see why one didn't come out, because I don't think the Sir wanted it to turn into a turkey shoot, which it would have done had they gone down to 14 players.
Yeah, it would have been. It would always have been a yellow card for accumulation as well, wouldn't it? And I think you're right. Sometimes when one team is superior to the other, that yellow card isn't really going to help anyone. So unless there is a cynical reason to give a yellow card, I get why you don't. But yeah, there was a few people around us saying, "Oh yeah, that was a bit." Saracens weren't at their dynamic best. And I'm like, mate, it's blowing an absolute gale and belting down with rain. You're not going to be playing slick running rugby. And what we did well was when we did have the ball in hand, we were still trying to chuck it around a little bit, but the kicking game, or the grubber kicks worked. Whereas, we tried it against London Irish a bit. It wasn't working at all, but there was no plan B from that. Whereas I think against Exeter, we did it very, very well in the first half. And then in the second half, didn't need to. Very, very, very different. And we actually went into ourselves a little bit, protected the lead, but still did enough to win penalties and gain territory and scored tries that way instead. So, it was a complete performance. Everything went our way. We probably didn't need to get out of third gear. And there will be tougher tests this season.
Absolutely. What I will say, one player who really did step up, and given the bad news on Magic Theo's ACL being out for the rest of the season, that blindside position suddenly becomes very, very important to us. And Andy Christie stepped up brilliantly in this game. I thought he had a massive influence over the game. Absolutely bossed the breakdown, bossed just getting in the face in defence, and led that area of the game superbly well.
Yeah, I think he's a great example of what we have quite often at Saracens, where a player looks like he's going to be very, very good, and in a way sometimes you get a little bit frustrated because they don't seem to get the game time that they deserve. But what's happening behind the scenes is Andy Christie and other players like him are being spoken to and are told, your time will come. At some point there will be a reason why you're going to get 10, 15 games almost on the spin. Be patient, keep working on your game. We know you're good enough to do it. And that's exactly what's happened. Theo's got injured. Andy Christie knows that he's the next cab off the rank. He's into that side. And yeah, he's made a massive, massive difference. I think it has helped in that game where you've got Maro Itoje, Nick Ezekwe, Andy Christie. We've got second rows that also play six. We've got line-out options, and Andy Christie can play his game more than he was able to against London Irish in a way.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% there. Brings me on to front row though, because you mentioned the return of some players, Maro, Nick Ezekwe. Jamie George returning was huge, but I thought the top performance in the front row was Marco Riccioni, who impresses me more and more each time I see him. He's an absolute brick at scrum time for a start, and again, we mentioned Vincent Koch here. You thought that when Vinny went that he stepped into that breach, had a year out injured, and he clearly is superb. And I will say that his try was out of this world. And I mean, you talk about the Owen, in fact, we're going to talk about Owen in a minute, but the try that he scored where Billy Villa, it was a tap ago, wasn't it? And then Billy's taking it, and you're looking at Billy going, oh, he's going to go over, he's going to bulldoze over a line. And then suddenly you see Mario toes you out the corner of your eye, and Marco takes a line, and bosh, thank you very much, I'll have a bit of that. That was just a thing. As a forward myself, that was an absolute thing of beauty to see. I mean, everybody talks about the great tries that wingers score and everything like that. I've seen there's been some anniversary of Gerald Davis try, which was wonderful to see. That was as much a thing of beauty, the way that it was done so quickly, so beautifully. It just cheered me up no end.
Oh yeah, there was two set plays in the game there that were brilliant. There was the pick and go, and there was the move off the line out with I think it was I can't remember whether it was Christie or Ezekiel actually that sort of took the ball with the line out.
It was Andy Christie who scored that try coming through. Yep. Sorry, my mistake. And Marco scored the try off of the line out where it was passed out.
Yeah, you're right. Both of them very, very clever set plays. Yeah, and quite often they won't work, but very well practiced and very well done. And it's the sort of thing that on a day like that, when chances are going to be few and far between because of the weather conditions, you have to make those set plays work. And we did that brilliant. Yeah, Marco Riccioni. One thing that worries me about him is he seems to be a little bit injury prone. He did take a knock during the game and was limping about a bit, but then I suppose all tight head props do. And yeah, we've spoken about our props quite a few times over the course of this season, doing a lot of unheralded work, and even the likes of Alec Clary, who is never going to be a big flair player, but sticks in a lot of graft. And you've got Riccioni, you've got Christian Judge as well, who we spoke to a couple of weeks ago. We've not really seen an awful lot of him yet, but he looked reasonably solid against Exeter, but against a front row that came on that didn't have a huge lot of work to do. So we've got a pretty reliable 4 players there with others to come in as well. So there's definitely a lot to like. But yeah, let's move on to the champagne moment of the game, shall we?
Well, absolutely. And I mean, we talked last week, me and Barry, about highlight moments, and I mentioned obviously Magic Theo and one-handed line out takes and everything like that. But you want to see Harlem Globetrotter rugby, you'll do no better than a man who apparently can't tackle, can't run, can't pass, can only kick a bit. It's the old Gene Kelly thing, is it? I think it was Gene Kelly. No, Fred Astaire once went up for an audition, and someone at MGM or wherever it was turned around, and the famous comment is, "Can't sing, can't act, can dance a little." It's Fred Astaire, and Owen Farrell is exactly the same, isn't it? That at the end of the day, people will turn around and say he can't pass, he can't run into gaps, he can't do this, he can't do that, can kick a bit. No, Owen Farrell is the best all-round 10 in the world, and he just put the cherry on top of the icing, on top of the massive great New Year cake, with that filthy one-handed pass behind him over the top of an on-rushing defence into Alex Lewington's hands. And given that Alex this season, and I'm not dishing him out one here, he has dropped a couple of those. He did the right thing, caught it and went into the corner and just, put a smile on Faz's face, which is wonderful to see because we don't see it very often, especially as earlier on in the game, he'd given, I can't remember if it was Adam Davis or Ivan Van Zyl, one of the scrum halves, he'd given them a proper telling off that was picked up on, and it was like, don't give me the effing ball to that position after he dropped it. And he was quite right, because he was given an absolute hospital ball, but then he was given a hospital ball to that situation and made something absolutely wonderful out of it. It was beautiful to see. And if he's not Steve Borthwick's number 10 for Scotland in the Calcutta Cup at the start of Six Nations, I will eat my hat and everything else that goes with it.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Who knows what Borthwick's going to... I mean, George Ford will probably come back in, wouldn't he? But, the pictures speak for themselves. Just watch it. I mean, I will turn around and say, I mean, if we were 10-3 down at that point in the game, I really can't see him doing that. I'm sure it was, scoreboard. He could have taken a bit of a risk, and you saw by the look on his face, he wasn't really sure that it was going to come off at all. But, moments like those, they add to your highlight reel, and it does make for a brilliant game, and it makes for an entertaining game, which a sold-out Stonex, which I'm sure opposition fans will hate to hear. Yeah, there were some empty seats with some fair weather rich season ticket holders not turning up because it was belting down with rain, but it was a sold out game. The atmosphere was brilliant, and they got to witness that bit of magic, which is fantastic.
I will point out that quite a few of those rich season ticket holders, like my mum and dad, were actually up in the boxes. They had all the hospitality for the weekend, so and fair dues to them. That's all good. And my brother and my sister-in-law did go along and sit in my mum and dad's seat, so they were full as well. But it was great to see. A wonderful game. Now, we mentioned the Six Nations there, and before we end, I just want to highlight something that I'm doing that I'd ask all of you guys out there who listen to the Fezcast to get involved in. Every year I do a prediction game based on the Six Nations, where you basically predict what you think, who you think will win each game, and a point spread, and you get points for accuracy and whatever, plus who's going to win the whole tournament, who's going to score the most points, who's going to score the most tries, and et cetera, et cetera. I do it to raise money for Motor Neurone, which is the charity that I support and I've run marathons for, and I'm running 2 marathons this year for as well, including the Rob Burrow Leeds Marathon in May. It costs a £5, and all you need to do to enter is email Six Nations Game for MND. So that's Six Nations Game, all lowercase, as its words, SIX, so on, with a number 4 and then MND at outlook.com. And we'll put the links up on Twitter and on Facebook, so you can get involved. It's a bit of fun. It costs you a £5, and depending on how many people enter, depends on how much I pay out in prize money. But it'll be 50% will be prize money, and 50% will go to MND through my Just Giving page charity. So I take it you'll have a go, Matt.
Yeah, I think I did all right last year as well. When I did.
Yeah, well, you did better than me, which was hard. I actually cocked it up big star last year. I don't know, for some reason I had faith in Eddie Jones. I don't know what that was going on about.
Well, I'm sure I was one of the few people to pick a draw in a game as well, which obviously.
Oh yeah, you pick a draw and you get a draw right. That does pump your points up quite nicely. But yeah, look, email me at Six Nations Game for MND at outlook.com. I'll send you the rules and an entry sheet and details of PayPal, so you can pay me your entry fee. And I think the first game's 4th of February, isn't it? Something like that. So as long as you're in before then with your entries, you're all in it. And as I say, you'll get an email from me once a week or after each round of games saying who's doing what and everything like that. It's a bit of fun. It's only a £5, isn't it? So there you go.
Perfect.
Excellent. Well, Matt, thank you for your time, and thank you everybody for listening in. Our next Fezcast will be going live on the 11th of January, and I hope to have a guest, which is going to take us a little bit of working to get, because this is going to be another like Simon Raoului one where we it's the other side of the world, but. I will leave that dangling there for you, and I hope that it does come off. I've got to message him tomorrow and get it on, but that should be a good one for someone to talk to on the Fezcast on the 11th of January. But until then, I wish everybody out there in Fezcast lands, all our Saracens family, the club, players, etc., very happy New Year, and hope 2023 is as good as 2022 ended.
May your Wi-Fi be strong and your beers be unspoiled.
Indeed, something like that. Well, Barry's doing dry January, isn't he? I mean, what sort of idiotic thing is that?
I think that's because the keg that he had over Christmas was all of his 2023 beers wrapped into 1 week. So yeah, he probably needs a bit of a detox, doesn't he?
Indeed. Well, we'll be back next week. Thank you everybody for listening, and Happy New Year to you all.
This is the Fezcast.